Hello and welcome. This is Mark Adams with Achievement Edge Training. You can reach me at achievementedgetraining.com. This is the second video on working with conflict, and today I'm going to be speaking about working with conflict, in particular the different ways people react to conflict. And to begin, I'm just going to get right into it, is there are three characteristic ways people address conflict. One being that they are going to just go right into it. And one person might turn and flee. They will avoid the conflict in one form or another. Another person might get right into it with them, and that's when you see the sparks fly and people are really upset, and there's all kinds of anger and emotion and accusations. And the third will be where somebody just kind of shuts down. They become defensive in one way or another, either by making excuses or just all kinds of defensive behaviors, which we will talk about. And one thing to be careful with all of these, each person can do these, but it's called passive aggressiveness. And what will generally happen, let's say this person, for example, they could just be brooding and getting more and more angry with the more things that are coming up with them. Or this person, they're turning away from the issue, but as they're turning away, they're thinking about all these things that are really upsetting them. Whereas this one is getting into the conflict, they're getting more upset. And what they can then do is, if they have a tendency to be passive aggressive, they can then act out by undermining or doing something behind the scenes to this other person to get back at them in some sort of retaliatory way. So we got to be careful when we're dealing with any kind of conflict to always go to have respect for the other person and hopefully not be withholding and having all these anger issues. And if we do, we need to find a way to work with and address those. One thing, too, before I move on to talk about conflict, is it's imperative that we all work towards a solution. If we're just getting stuck on our issue and we're only wanting to drive our point of view instead of being able to see both sides, we're not really, doesn't seem like we're very serious about addressing the issue. And so we need to always be able to be willing to look at what's going on, and that's what a lot of this video is going to go on to talk about. So to talk about a playing field, when we enter into a conflict, we should be able to look at, what kinds of things are at stake. We should have a knowledge of the issue, which seems kind of obvious, but how many times do we see people go into a conflict without really knowing more than maybe just their little fragment of the information and believe that they know what's going on and then approach the whole thing like they know it all. So we need to increase our knowledge of the issue. We also need to look at within ourselves, is this something that's a petty issue with me? Maybe it's something I'm upset about, but is it really legitimate in regards to the bigger scheme of what's on the field, what's at stake, or is this something that maybe I need to deal with, or maybe needs to be looked at a little bit differently? So that's incredibly important, because a lot of times when we watch people in conflict, people from the outside can say, boy, this is maybe not really as big of an issue as they think it is. But because they're emotionally tied to it, for them, it's really big. So we got to be very careful with that. We also need to look at what kind of an impact is this conflict causing, or could potentially cause, for either myself, the other people, or the organization. So being able to look down the road at, again, what's on the field. Looking at the experience and respecting the experience and the education of the other people. Are they credible? And that isn't to say I'm going to take all of these facts of their credibility onto the field and throw it in their face if I don't feel that they are. It's just a matter of having a deeper level of respect of what's really going on here. What is the purpose for entering into this conflict? And we're going to talk about that quite a bit more, but is it to get your way? Are you just trying to storm down and achieve what you want without really seeing what's going on? And that kind of goes to one of the next things, is getting stuck on our issue. We might get so stuck that we feel like I'm an immovable object and I'm going to get my way one way or another, when instead all conflict really is going to need us in some way to be movable. If we can't move, then we're going to either get ran over, or people are going to not respect us, and we won't be able to see other angles of the position that we might be missing, which leads to what is being overlooked. A lot of times we think we know everything about what's going on, but really there might be a perspective that we're missing out on, or that we're not giving enough credence to. and then looking to co-create solutions, working with the other people involved. What's going on? What can we do different? So that's really a good example of being able to move, getting off your position to be able to see what's happening and move around and work with the issue. The other aspect, unfortunately, is the thing that we have to really look out for on the, in some respects, the dangerous side of it. To begin with, though, look at what's our rapport and what will this do to our rapport if we're entering into this conflict, especially if it's a petty thing that's more of our issue than it is something that really impacts everybody else. What are the consequences? Now, I listed me. It's not. Obviously, it can impact you directly, but you should always look at how does this impact others and the other people involved. But also, we need to look at what kind of ramifications can this have, personally, professionally, and look at what kinds of things with my integrity. How far do I want to go with this issue? Is this issue something that's going to advance and move forward with the organization or what's going on or the issue, or is this something that am I being something that's really negative here? Is this creating more strife than maybe is necessary? And that goes into looking at being a leader or a change agent. What might appear to be strife for some people might actually be something that could be moving it into a new direction. So it depends on perspective, which then goes into really understanding what's the whole thing here and being able to get off your position and move and look around. And a lot of times a leader might be considered a rebel or a troublemaker. And again, it goes back to looking at what's your intention, what are you really trying to get by approaching this issue. And sometimes we have to stir things up. Sometimes there needs to be conflict, because otherwise the people that might be called whistleblowers or what have you would shy away from certain issues, and issues that need to be addressed might be put to the side or not confronted. So we need to sometimes be a little bit of these people, but we need to also keep ourselves in check and balance. Is this only impacting me? Is it only about what I care about? Innovation. Sometimes we have to, deal with some conflict and work with risk to be innovating and leading in the field with what we're working with. So one other thing, well, we're going to go right into talking about how conflict is typically addressed. And typically there's the two ways that I mentioned, where people are going to attack and the other people will either attack back or they're going to defend in some way. And in some ways, the defensiveness can be running away, the flight or flight type of thing. But with all of these, we need to really look at what is the purpose. If I'm going to attack somebody, I need to step back. Usually an attack is something that's kind of spur of the moment, or where somebody's really emotionally charged and upset. And we need to look at what is my real intention with attacking this person. And as well, what's my purpose with when this person comes at me to explain? Do I feel like I have to over-explain myself? Do I have to rationalize or tell them why? And in some situations you might need to, but we need to really look at what is our intention with how we're behaving in these situations. If it's to call wrongdoing, well, if you're a manager or somebody that's overseeing other people, there are certain times and circumstances where you do have to hold people accountable into the carpet about things, but doing so in the right way, which leads me to one thing I forgot about over here, which is what I kind of talk about is grandstanding. You have your side of people over here, your side of people over here, and you're having this issue. Most of the time, these issues should not be a public forte where everybody is sitting there watching and scoring points, where it's like 26 to 32 or something, and people are keeping track. This should not be about win and lose. It should not be about grandstanding where you're trying to show off in some way or to make yourself look good by saying things that when you're just by yourself with the other people in a conflict situation, you might be more amenable to communicating with them more effectively, which we'll get into as well. So let me move back down here with this, to make them wrong. If you're going out to make them wrong, we need to look at our ego and why is it, if we're really going to be a good leader, how is it going to serve us to try to really prove them wrong? Instead, it should be something where we can use that as an opportunity to coach and teach and lead them. Making somebody wrong really does nothing for them. If anything, it just is going to create some anger and hostility and future conflict. And if we're attacking something that they care about, that's the same thing. We're going to create more anger and upset when, again, going back to really understanding what's going on and why. Having a credible and justified position, you might feel like you're in the very right place to be attacking these people, but all anger on both sides is really, people don't really realize this, but anger deep down is a need that's been unmet, or it's been a hurt. And that might sound kind of touchy-feely to some people, but really anger is a secondary emotion that stems from some of these things right here. So to move on with that, I wanted to talk about the missing piece in the middle here, and that is, understanding. We can be on attack or defense, but a lot of times we get stuck on one side or the other instead of really looking to understand. Working with our active listening, it's and reflective listening. Did I hear you right? Am I really understanding this? Instead of, no, you're wrong here, and drawing a wall and only seeing what's on your side, we need to be able to look to the other side, draw somebody's eyes here, and really look to understand what's going on from their frame of reference and their point of view, as well as, have some credibility and respect for the other person. Suspend your ego, get off of where you are, and be able to really realize that maybe despite your experience and knowledge or understanding of what's going on, maybe they have something to offer too. And getting off your power and control issues. A lot of times people think, well, I don't have that. But when it gets right down to it, it's a need to win. It's getting off the win or lose, that I've been challenged, and so it becomes a competition. And as I mentioned in the last video, checking your biases, looking at where you're closing off certain things because you believe this and you want to disregard everything from the outside. We need to really keep all of that in check. And lastly, when we get down here to my example with, we have 2 or 3 choices here when it comes to conflict. Person number 1 here can go and attack this person number 2. Person number 2 has a choice of attacking, defending, or retreating. And depending on what they do, if they attack, or if they, depending on how they become defensive, person number 1 then has a choice of doing the same thing: attack, defend, or retreat. And then it goes on: attack, defend, retreat. And this can become a cycle where each person just continues this on, to where instead, at this point, for every person, they have a choice to use the other part of the equation here, which we just talked about, which is called, moving to understanding. I'm going to, instead of attacking or defending myself, I'm going to seek more information. I'm going to look to see what's going on. And from there, then we can, co-create and work to develop things to a higher level. I hope you've enjoyed this video on working with conflict. For more information, visit me at www.achievementedgetraining.com. You can also follow me on Twitter at AchievementEdge. For email, you can reach me at info@achievementedgetraining.com. Thank you.